Today's show is called Women in Cartooning. It explores the work and viewpoints of two talented women who practice their art in separate areas of funny business. We'll meet Wendy Pini, illustrator and author of Elfquest magazine, and political cartoonist Kate Sally Palmer. While visiting the special Women in Comics exhibit at the Museum of Cartoon Art, we had a chance to talk with Wendy Pini of Elfquest magazine. I asked Wendy about her background and the development of Elfquest magazine.
Well, I've had a very checkered career. I became a professional illustrator in 1974, working for science fiction magazines, Galaxy and If, doing interior illustrations and covers. And at the time, I thought that that was my first love. That would be the direction that I would go in. Then in 1976, I became connected with the comics again, Marvel Comics specifically, through the Red Sonja comic, which I scripted an issue of. And in 1977, I proposed the idea for Elfquest to my husband, Richard. And in 1978, we brought out our first published issue, which was issue number 2. Issue number 1 had been published by a publisher which we found who did not treat us very well. We decided if we wanted anything done right, we'd have to do it ourselves. And so Elfquest just took off from there. Originally, we had offered Elfquest to both major mainstream companies, and they both rejected it as being not potentially commercial enough.
I see. I was going to ask that question because it...
But so we really wanted to tell the story, and we decided, okay, we're going to go for it ourselves. And the delicious irony is now that Marvel Comics will be reprinting Elfquest in its entirety.
Well, that's wonderful. That's news, I guess. That's sort of recent,
yes,
isn't it?
it's a recent development. The nicest thing about it of all is that we were able to tell the story, start to finish, all 20 issues, exactly the way we wanted to tell it.
That's the way it should be done.
And it's going to be reprinted exactly the way we told it. Well, they're not going to make any changes.
Wendy, that's great. That's good news. It's sort of unusual in our business, too.
It's a first.
Wendy, would you mind telling me what your experience was, your background in terms of illustration or preparation to do Elfquest?
Oh, my.
I ask you that because I really admire your style. I think it's really good, and I see some things in the exhibit, for example, that I think are innovative approaches graphically, and I think it's real good. It's exciting to see something like that.
Well, innovation from ignorance, perhaps. I'm a self-trained artist. I've had no formal education in illustration or use of materials, and this has slowed me down in my career. I think I could have gotten a lot farther, a lot faster, but that's the way things worked out. My influences are varied. I was extremely strongly influenced by animated cartoons all through my life. As a child, the worst punishment you could give me would be to take away my cartoons. That my parents knew it.
Used as a tool.
I was a devotee of the Warner Brothers style of stretch and squash, and getting movement onto paper was my goal. I wanted so badly to see my drawings move, but at the same time I never had the patience to be an animator. It takes a profound dedication to be an animator, and I just didn't have that quality. But in my teen years and early 20s, my work also reflected an influence of like turn-of-the-century illustrators like Howard Pyle and Maxfield Parrish and so forth. I was very much into line. And one other influence, which I think accounts for some of the innovative qualities in my work, comes from a strong influence of Japanese cartooning. Osamu Tezuka, who is the equivalent of the Walt Disney of Japan, is kind of like my unwitting mentor. His creations, Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, his use of line, which is tremendously strong and yet at the same time very sparse, and he just says what he needs to say in the fewest possible lines, was very inspiring to me, because I think particularly women, when they are just starting out, tend to get loaded down with what I call spinach. They tend to focus on detail rather than structure. This is what I've observed in the portfolios of young women who come to me now and want to break into the business. I say, learn structure first, then concentrate on detail. This is what the Japanese cartooning taught me.
That's real interesting. I think that, what would your advice be to a young person that would come to you with perhaps no background at all, like yours, in art, what would you say to them today?
First of all, I would say nuke rapidographs.
Sure. That was neat.
Rapidographs are a technical pen that
Sure.
artists use. Of course, you're familiar with it. But what they do for amateur artists, or against amateur artists, I would say, is they tend to rely on the instrument controlling the line, rather than learning how to control the line through their own sensitivity of their fingers.
You know, of course, that we're going to have all sorts of technical illustrators that are going to be after us now.
I've never been afraid to express my opinions as long as there's a camera between me and the enemy.
No, that's great. I understand. Go ahead.
No, it's true. So many young artists, male and female, come to me with their portfolios, and the first thing I see is this scritchy, scratchy, spinachy inking done with the rapidograph, which controls the line for them, and they get sort of obsessed with this, and I say, no. No. First, you've got to learn the structure. You've got to study anatomy like crazy, especially if you want to go into comic book illustration, because that's the first thing they look for, is how do you handle your figures? Can you move them in any position and make them look three-dimensional? And a lot of young artists start out getting no mass or weight into their figures, not really realizing that these are three-dimensional objects, even though they are supposedly people. You must look at them as a series of masses and cylinders and spheres and so forth, and treat them as such from any angle. So I say, first learn structure, learn the weight and feel of things, study anatomy like crazy, draw from life. Don't copy somebody else's work, some other artist that you admire in the comics or whatever. Find how the world really looks and interpret it your own way. That's the best way to develop your own style. And then I would say, then begin to learn what kind of materials are available to you and what ones help you grow the most. I would highly recommend anyone who wants to come into the comic book profession to learn how to ink with a brush, and to stay away from rapidographs entirely, except for when you want an extremely precise geometric line.
That's interesting. I think that's good advice. Plus, I would add onto that, practice, practice, practice.
Oh, that's the first thing. You have to be a little bit nuts and really dedicated.
How about, why aren't there more women in cartooning, all right?
Why aren't there more women in any profession? Things are really opening up in the mainstream comics for women. A lot of young women are coming into the business right now and injecting new blood into it, new insights, new ideas.